Welcome to Dev Talk with Dan. Today I'm joined by Stephanie Cushing, a software developer who went from college athletics to code school. Let's dive into her story and explore the lessons she learned along the way. Welcome to Dev Talk with Dan. We're here with Stephanie Cushing. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So, we're here to talk a little bit about your journey into software development. Can you share how you got from college athletics to software development? This is a new one I haven't heard before.
I'm gonna do my best, like most things. It's not definitely not linear. So yeah, as you said, I was working in college athletics. I was a student athlete in college. I went to Furman University, right down the road in Greenville, and thought I wanted to be on ESPN and do all that fun stuff. And then I actually got an internship in sports, and I was like, whoa, this might not be exactly for me, but I did end up going to get my master's degree in sport administration, worked jobs in sports. My last job before getting into tech was at Furman. I was doing game operations and facilities, and COVID hit, and I think COVID gave a lot of people a lot of opportunities to think about what was important to them, think about, what do I want out of life and how do I make the most of my time. And so, I wasn't I was happy being back at Furman, but I wasn't quite making the impact. I was super comfortable where I was. Sports is very comfortable for me. And I decided, if I want to grow as a person and I want to grow as a professional, then I'm going to have to make a change. Change is something that gets us into those super uncomfortable positions. And I had thought about doing getting into tech previously, but just wasn't in a place where I was super supported or honestly brave enough to just take the leap. So after talking to some folks and kind of that were already in the tech industry, I decided to look online and see if there was a local code school. And sure enough, Carolina Code School. So I enrolled there and just kind of jumped in with both feet, honestly. And then was fortunate enough to get a job shortly after graduating from code school and starting my journey into tech.
Did you do code school concurrently with your role at Furman, or did you just kind of like cut and no safety
No,
net?
no. That was the thing, about being brave enough and being supported enough. I was fortunate enough that my family could be supportive, emotionally and, financially a little bit here and there, which was great because, the immersive program at Carolina Code School, it's very hard to work any kind of job, and go through that program. And it was just a leap of faith, honestly, and a leap of faith in myself, a leap of faith in my support system, and thankfully it worked out.
What other challenges did you face as you went through the code school and even started looking for your first job?
So, like I said, lifelong athlete, not great with failure, which, as you know, and any developer that watches this knows that basically all we do all day is fail, right? So it's just a series of failures where it's okay, but sports, and I played softball and I'm expected to do things 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 times right. So that was really so very hard for me to, sometimes you sit at your computer and the toughest part is just starting to write code, and so I was so kind of frozen by my fear of failing. That's a mouthful. But that sometimes it was just hard for me to just write the code, just start writing the code. It's okay if it doesn't work at first. That's the whole point. The point is to break stuff. The point is to just see what happens. So that for me, both, you know, going into code school and then going into looking for a job was something that, the jobs I'd had previously, I kind of knew people that could get me in the door at least and to the table. So this was kind of like since college was like my first like time in a long time looking for a job where I was like, I don't know anybody and I'll try my best, but whatever happens is going to happen and I'm just going to keep plugging away at it. So.
There is a fair amount of experimentation in sports, though. We're going to try this play, we're going to try this pitch, and you make
Mhm.
an informed decision, but sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and go 3, 2, 1, go. right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
the same thing
Exactly.
works at the computer sometimes when you don't know where to start, you don't know who to contact. It's like I don't have to solve the whole thing. I just have to figure out
Right.
like the next step I have to take. Ready, go.
Exactly. And it
And
seems like the
see how it
universe
goes.
always gives you another opportunity. It's like make an error in the field in softball, which I did a lot of. And it was like, okay, it was like, for whatever reason, the next ground ball was coming right to me. And it was like, all right, this is my opportunity to like just kind of pick myself up. Let's get over that. Let's learn what we need to learn from that mistake and move forward. So
Do you think there are other ways in which your experience in athletics prepared you for a career in tech?
definitely. Tech, I think in the roles I've been in so far is about teamwork and being able to work with different kinds of personalities. You join a team, any team, and you're having to kind of figure out how do I communicate with these folks and how do I make sure that we're on the same page and being clear and concise. But then there's also the aspect of just grinding it out. Sometimes, like we were talking about, like it just doesn't work. And what you're trying, whatever Stack Overflow thing you've pulled into your project, it doesn't work. And you've just got to continue to grind and then knowing when to ask for help. Being on a team and being a developer and just being a human is knowing when to ask for help. And I think that was something that I also had to learn because I like being right and I want it to be right. And if I ask somebody and I'm wrong, it's like, ah, so it's just having that like communication with your team members that for me was huge. So I think athletics has a lot of carryover as far as the work ethic and the grit and the determination and the communication on a team.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of team in software development. There's very little
Definitely.
software that gets developed by one guy in a closet anymore. Or
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
What was the biggest misconception you had about software development before you entered code school? What
Ooh.
did you find surprising? Like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be like that.
So this is probably going to sound a little silly, and I know we do use math, but like I thought I was like decent at math, and I was like, I wonder how good at math I have to be to do this. So I was a little worried about that, to be honest. But it depended, kind of depending on what you're developing and what you're doing. I'm not a game developer, I'm not dealing with vectors and all these kinds of things. Um, but that was probably the biggest like piece that I was like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna go, but I'm gonna try.
Only math geeks can do this, but
Yes, only
that's
math.
not true. Now there are plenty of things for the math geeks to work on in software, but
Right, right, right. So yeah, that was probably it. I definitely did not think it was going to be easy. I definitely had no misconceptions about how difficult it was going to be. I mean, it's learning a new language. So yeah, I kind of prepared, like I probably over prepared myself, honestly.
well, you didn't psych yourself out because you went through with it.
That's true. That's true.
Can you share any advice for others who are looking to transition into a tech career?
Yeah, I would say just take the leap. Believe, like have that belief in yourself, honestly. I think if you are like be very intentional about what you want, not just out of like the career, but for me, like tech provides such a work-life balance for me that I was looking for at this stage in my life. And you've kind of got to think like we're kind of moving away from our jobs being who we are and moving into like this is the job that I do and then this is the person that I am. Now you can meld those together. Obviously, we're sitting here talking about me being an athlete and being in software. So obviously there are ways that those things overlap, but honestly, if you're thinking about it, just, do your research, be very intentional, and then make sure that you have a really good support system. Because if I wouldn't have had the support system that I had, especially with code school, I definitely don't think it would have been as easy. And that's definitely something that I tell everybody who's thinking about it. Like, make sure you prepare your family. Make sure I told my friends, like, I'm sorry, guys, for the next 12 weeks, it's a no. I can't do it. I'm putting my focus completely on this because this is my goal and this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And I'm not going to get there without having to make sacrifices. So be prepared to make sacrifices and be intentional, and just, if you're going to do it. Don't go in, just don't dip your toe in. You gotta take a cannonball into the pool on this one.
And for code school, it really is that you get out of it what you put into it. You could
Absolutely.
kind of coast through code school and sort of get some stuff, but if you really immerse yourself and throw yourself into those projects, you'll get so much more out of it.
Definitely, definitely, for sure.
So how do you continue to learn and grow in your role as a software developer?
Gosh, that happens on the daily. I also I look to my friends that are also developers. I ask them what they're working on. Or I ask other developers on my team, like, hey, I'm just curious what you're working on. Like, can you share this piece? Or I heard you say this in a meeting and I'm really curious to know more about it. So, if you have some time, would you mind jumping on a call with me so we can take a look at what you're talking about? And then I feel like I've had like a running list since code school, but like a running list of topics that I'm like, ooh, I need to go back and revisit that. Ooh, I need to go back and revisit that. But honestly, the relationships with other developers, and like, especially the ones that are pretty active on social media and LinkedIn and stuff, I love seeing what other people are working on. And I love kind of either asking them about it or kind of digging into it myself. So that's kind of how I kind of stay learning and stay curious. I mean, I was listening, and your last one, you were talking about curiosity, and that's what this is all about. I mean, you have to stay curious. I mean, something that you do today is going to change in 2 days. It could change by the end of this recording. So, you just have to have that curiosity, and continue to ask questions, and have good, again, and you have to be a good teammate too. If somebody asks you, hey, I'm really curious about what you're working on, also be willing to share that, because all that stuff goes both ways. Something that they might know how to do, and we both know how to do it, I might do it in a different way than they do. And so I've learned a new way that might be a little more effective than the way I was doing it. So
Yeah, I think curiosity is really an important tool in software development. But if you
100%.
get in a room, a networking event with software developers, and kind of ask how many of you have taken something apart and not been able to figure out how to get it back together, it's like everybody's like, yeah, I take stuff apart. And
Yep.
it is that curiosity about how things work, or what's a better way that this could be, exist, do, or a better process that we could use
Exactly.
to get a better result. And I think that sort of that continuous learning and that continuous questioning of the things, being complacent as a software developer gets you outdated quick.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you tell us about your experience with mentorship and how it has impacted your career?
Yeah, so my kind of, I'll call it a journey with mentorship, actually started when I was talking to folks that were, as I was looking at code school. There is a student that I worked with at Furman that she's like, oh, you want to get into tech? That's really cool. My aunt works in tech. And I said, oh, cool. What's your aunt do? And she said, oh, well, she was the CTO at Capital One for a while. And I'm like, okay, can I? She's like, yeah, she'll chat with you. She'll talk. Like, here's her name, here's her number. Her name's Julie Elberfeld. And Julie was so, it started with Julie, and she was so kind with her time. She was so giving. We scheduled a call for maybe like 30 or 45 minutes, and we talked for like an hour and a half. So for someone that has been there, done that, especially as a woman, and being able to speak to all the things and challenges that she faced, like, that was just the start of it being huge, and impactful for me. And seeing the impact that she had on me is something that I was like, okay, I got to do this because I want to do this for someone else. Um, and then my first role, I mean, obviously I had a fantastic instructor at code school. Maddie Chapman was just so great. The way she taught, how she kind of understood that there's a whole lot of empathy that also needs to happen, even though she's really pushing us and pushing us hard to get this information. So I definitely look up to her as a mentor as well. And then my first role, I know what kind of person I am, and I think self-awareness goes a long way. So I knew that in my first role, I was going to need a mentor because I knew I was getting out of code school and I wasn't going to know everything. I wasn't even going to be remotely close. So I was looking for roles that had mentorships in them. And I had a mentor in my first role. His name's Jonathan. I love Jonathan. I still talk to Jonathan almost every day. I still ask him questions every day, but he was a senior developer in my first role, and he actually was like he's 10 years younger than me. Here I am. You can tell I'm all over the place. I'm like, hey, tell me about yourself. Tell me about, your life. Where are you from? What do you like? And he kind of took all of that in stride. And, the thing that he did was he never made me feel like any question I asked him was stupid. He always was really gracious with his time as well. And his curiosity. I mean, his curiosity to me, I think he really understood that I'm seeing it through this whole totally different lens that he hasn't seen it through in a long time. And so I think just us feeding back and forth off of each other was huge. And I had a great team. There's a couple other developers that just constantly coming over to my desk, like, hey, what are you working? Let me see what you're working on. And just kind of like, all right, kind of explain this to me. What are you doing here? What are you trying to do? Hey, here's another way you can do it. Let's take a look at it. So all of those people, all of those experiences have really motivated me to want to give that back in kind to, even if it's one person, if one person can get a little nugget of something out of this, then I'm happy. But I've been, gosh, I'm so grateful for the people that I've had. The gratitude, I can't even quantify it or put it into words because there were so many people that were so gracious with me. So mentorship is huge for me.
That's one of the reasons I post on LinkedIn. That's one of the reasons I do the podcast. If somebody can take one nugget from this and it changes their career trajectory for the better, then
Yep,
I've accomplished what I set out to do.
exactly, exactly.
Well, why is giving back to new developers important to you, and how do you plan to do so?
I just think that regardless of the situation, I think this is more of like a life thing that I bring into it, but I think it's important to leave things better than we found it. So, whether it's I'm walking on a trail and I pick up a piece of trash that was left there, like I've left that space better than I found it. And so being able to have someone maybe have just this much less of a freak out in a similar experience in code school, like I'll take that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm going to be real honest with you, and you're still going to freak out, but I want to be able to at least help you or help someone like get through that and have a better experience, even if it's just a little bit. Like, hey, maybe you didn't freak out about this one project or this one line of code. Like, we'll even go that minute, but it's just, I don't know, regardless of the industry that I've worked in, I've coached before in my career, so I've always loved doing that. I love seeing people accomplish things that they didn't think that they could do. It's very fulfilling. It's incredible. So it's just so important. And I really don't think that any industry or any company, like I don't think that you can grow or have your employees grow without having this give back from somewhere. So I think it's just a really important thing in general, like life, career, anything.
Yeah, for sure. And the more you give, the more you get in return, and it pays off in ways you'll never imagine.
Yep.
Yeah. You're big on collaboration too. Can you share an experience where collaboration with the design team was crucial to a project's success?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. I am so glad you asked this question. At my first role, I had two of the most fantastic UX UI designers. They taught me so much and they were so great to work with. I will say one of them, she had a coding background. She had coded, so she understood kind of like, okay, I kind of know what the limit is at some point, so I'm not going to make something overly complicated or difficult in my design. But our other designer did not have any coding experience, but they just they just were so passionate and intentional is like another, again, the word intentional has come up a couple times, but intentional in what they were doing and intentional in their communication, that it was so easy to work with them. And I also go in and I'm like, hey, look, I'm new here. I don't know what I'm doing. I will take any help you can give me, any explanations. If you have like a cheat sheet of some sort, I would really love that. But they were great putting stuff together into a document where there were links directly to the components that I was needing to use. And they were just very thorough in their work. And it made it a lot easier for us to communicate back and forth, and for me to be less nervous to say, I don't know if I can do it this way. I'm going to try. I can't spend too much time on it, but hey, can we look at something else? Like, what else do you have up your sleeve that we might be able to accomplish? So, a couple of the projects I worked on in my first role, like, those ladies are fantastic at what they do. And I'm, again, like, when I say I lucked out in my first role, I don't know, like, if the planets were in alignment or what happened, but it was great. So, collaborating with the design team, I really came to enjoy, because I learned a lot from them as well.
That's awesome. And I think there are more things that software developers can learn from design people that just makes the whole
Yeah,
process more enjoyable, but
definitely.
also gets a better outcome because I think we don't focus enough on things like accessibility and
Hmm.
yeah, and I think we're
They're
leaving
just
out a
trained to think
population.
differently.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's build it in, don't add it on later. It's like
Hmm.
maybe in code school you write the project and you don't write the security and the logging layer. We'll add those later. No, no, that's the framework you need to be building on, and not we'll just tack that on later.
Just add it on. It's
Yeah.
fine.
So we've talked about teamwork and communication, which
Yeah,
most people would consider non-technical skills. How do you
sure.
balance skills like that along with your technical skills?
Oh, that's a good question too. Honestly, because I am not afraid to communicate, I'm not afraid to say what I don't know. And being able, I think that's such an underrated skill, is to just say, I don't know. Checking your ego at the door and being like, hey, things are, and I think because tech changes so frequently, that we're all kind of held to this, like, all right, well, you might have known what it was like a few months ago, but they just put up a new update and now we're kind of on a level playing field. So now we really do have to work together and communicate to figure out what it is that we're trying to do. So, again, just asking questions, saying, hey, can you show me this? Or I used to, if I ever had downtime, a couple of my mentors would be like, all right, I want you to just try and do this little, like, here's the problem we're trying to solve. I want you to just write a quick function and do it. And so, hey, okay, I'm done. Come on over and we can talk about it. So you can really take your code and honing those skills. And if you don't have, and this is also, you have to be willing to communicate, but the communication has to flow both ways. So I think it's important to not only ask the questions, but to be willing to answer them. And I think we all know, as developers, I had to learn how to ask the question, and say, hey, look, whenever you have a second, if you could help me with this, like, I understand we all have our stuff going on. We've got deadlines. We're in the middle of sprints. We're doing whatever it is that we're doing. But hey, when you have 5 minutes, can you just help me out with this real quick? Come look at my code real quick. So I think knowing how to ask and when to ask and kind of how to phrase it, is a piece of, like, a communication piece that is helpful when it comes to talking about code. So, I just try and be mindful of other people's time, and other people are mindful with my time. And at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goal. So it doesn't behoove any of us not to communicate and to learn from each other. So
Yeah, we're all trying to get the sprint across the line.
yeah.
And I'm asking for a nudge in the right direction. I'm not asking for the solution. Here's the things I've already tried, right?
Correct. That was huge. Here's what I already tried, because those guys taught me, like, what, let me see what you did. And if you didn't do it, there was no way I was going to those guys without trying a couple of things, because they were going to give me a hard time. which fair, totally fair.
Yeah, a lot of software development is figuring it out, whatever that means, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It depends.
Yeah. And developing a strategy for how you're going to try and figure it out,
Yeah.
and then having a fallback for when all of that falls through
Inevitably,
is a
yes.
great approach. Yeah. I mean, there is something to be said for traveling a road that's familiar, but so many times we end up in areas where just like, I've
Yeah.
never tried to do that before. Maybe you'll even read it's not possible, but if we plug away at this, we might figure it out.
We might. We might.
So, do you have a strategy that you use to communicate with non-technical people effectively?
I try and think of talking to myself before I went to code school. Um, I try and again, I think empathy goes a long way because I think it's important to understand, and I found this working with project managers sometimes that, they're getting pushed from a client and they have to report to somebody, I have to report to somebody. So when we're talking about technical things, trying to find common ground with them. And I think, again, this is where communicating like outside of just like professional talk, like, hey, how's your life going kind of stuff when you're working with other people. Even if it's just like, hey, how's your day going? Because if my day's not going well and I snap at you, then it's not your fault that I'm having a bad day. Like, that's my bad. And I need to understand that. But again, I just try and think about talking to me before I went to code school because honestly, that's the best way that I can be like, all right, let me run it back real quick, think about all the stuff that I did not know and still don't know, and let me try and find another way. And I think me having been a coach before also helped that a lot because certain things with certain athletes, they don't they don't click the same. And so sometimes you just have to find a different way of saying something for it to click for them. And so I definitely have leaned on those experiences to guide me in communicating with the non-technical folks.
Yeah, and some of that is just learning the communication style of the person you're talking with. And also, I
Mhm.
think finding examples that they can relate to. For instance,
Definitely.
if they have a hobby or something that you can kind of say, well, it's like
Yeah.
in this area when you're trying to, whatever, when you're trying to
Yeah.
attach the rope and you're, you've not
Yeah.
really done this before and the rock face is unfamiliar and you kind of can
Usually
explain
mine
that.
is well, it's like you're drinking from a fire hose and then someone notches that one up a step. That that's how I describe things with people. I'm like, we'll get it. We'll figure it out.
Varying pressure changes in that fire hose is all.
Yeah.
What challenges you mentioned in your sort of first mentor call with the female CTO? What challenges have you faced as a woman in tech, and how have you overcome them?
I don't know that I have actually seen them yet. Again, like I have been so fortunate to be surrounded by great people, men, women, and everyone. I will say, I did do. It was last year at the Carolina Code Conference. I had the opportunity to give a talk, and I think I was like one of maybe like one or two women that spoke. And so really it's just seeing it kind of hurts me to see that imbalance. I've also through Women Who Code, or whatever we're called now, women in tech, like going to speak to young women in high school about it, and they don't think they can do it. Like they don't think it's for them. But having the understanding and trying to get the message across that like, hey, you have a place here. And I think again with sports, like we're just seeing this big upswing in women's sports. I've got the t-shirt that says everyone watches women's sports. We're seeing this huge upswing, but there had to be people before them that said, like, we're here and we're going to take this space up. And it's important for us to do that. So while I don't think I've been directly impacted, I should say, because I've worked with such awesome people, to see it around in other spaces that I've been, it's we got a ways to go. But again, I'm not someone who's going to shy away from a challenge. I think I learned that about myself in a lot of ways. And I think, taking up space as a woman is important. And that the more we can do that as women and LGBTQ and people of color, like the more that we can encourage those people to get into these spaces and to take that space up, the better it's going to get. So I've been really fortunate, but I also understand that people like Julie had to come before me, and kind of crawl so that I could walk.
So, what advice do you give to those women who think that this career field's not for them?
Oh man, you're gonna take me. I'm gonna like slip into coach mode. I actually mentored one of the female students in the last cohort at Carolina Code School, and I said, "Look, I'm gonna be your biggest hype woman right now. Like, you can do this. You just have to take that space up. It might feel like it's not meant for you, and there's going to be people that are going to question you and question why you're here and question whether or not you can do it, but you can do it. And I think it's so much more rewarding when you get to prove everybody wrong. When you get to take up that space and say, I'm here. And if you don't like it, that sounds like a you problem and not a me problem, because I'm here, I'm doing my job, I'm learning, and I'm here to grow. And again, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. So why not have as many different voices in the room as we can? I mean, we're talking about tech.
Well, I appreciate the perspectives that you brought to that, the parallels between team sports and communication and how that translates into technology. And I don't think it was as far a leap as I thought it might be at the beginning.
You were skeptical at first. I know you got on here.
I was. I enjoy a new twist to what might seem like the same old story of I'm now a software developer.
Yeah, good. And I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, because again, there might be somebody who watches this that just says, I think I can do that. I think I want to do that. And so if me saying just take the leap and be brave, then that's what I'm here for.
Well, from Stephanie and Dan, we wish you a happy tech life. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.